Just like Tom Scott's pub Hovercraft, this is for entertainment purposes only. I didn't get a chance to put a pub on my Hovercraft this weekend, so I'm just going to read about pubs. A pub, or public house, is an establishment licensed to serve alcoholic drinks for consumption on the premises. The term public house first appeared in the late 17th century and was used to differentiate private houses from those which were quite literally open to the public, as alehouses, taverns, and inns. By Georgian times, it had become common parlance. Although taverns as a distinct establishment had largely ceased to exist by the beginning of the 19th century, today pubs have no strict definition. But CAMRA states a pub has 4 characteristics. Is open to the public without membership or residency. 2. Serves draught beer or cider without requiring food be consumed. 3. Has at least one indoor area not laid out for meals. 4. Allows drinks to be bought at a bar, not only table service. The history of pubs can be traced to Roman taverns in Britain and through Anglo-Saxon alehouses, but it was not until the early 19th century that pubs, as we know them today, first began to appear. The model also became popular in countries and regions of British influence, where pubs are often still considered to be an important aspect of their culture. In many places, especially in villages, pubs are the focal point of local communities. In his 17th century diary, Samuel Pepys described the pub as the heart of England. Although the drinks traditionally served include draught beer and cider, most also sell wine, spirits, coffee, and soft drinks. Many also offer meals and snacks. A license is required to operate a pub, and the licensee is known as the landlord or landlady, or the publican. Publican? Not like a Republican, huh? Often colloquially referred to as their local by regulars. Pubs are typically chosen for their proximity to home or work. Good food, social atmosphere, the presence of friends and acquaintances, and the availability of pub games such as darts or snooker, like pool here. Pubs often screen sporting events such as rugby and football. The pub quiz was established in the UK in the 1970s. Origins. Ale was a native British drink before the arrival of the Roman Empire in the 1st century. But it was with the construction of the Roman road network that the first pubs called tabernae began to appear. The word eventually became corrupted into tavern. After the departure of Roman authority in the 5th century and the fall of the Roman British kingdoms, the Anglo-Saxons established alehouses that may have grown out of domestic dwellings, first attested in the 10th century. These alehouses quickly evolved into meetings, houses for folk to socially congregate, gossip, and arranged mutual help within their communities. The Wantage Law Code of Aethelred Unready. Who is that guy? Aethelred II, known as the Unready, was king of English from 978 to 1013, and again from 1014 until his death. His epithet does not derive from the modern word unready, but rather from the Old English unread, meaning poorly advised, which this video is poorly advised. Prescribes fines for breaching the peace at meetings held in alehouses. A traveler in the early Middle Ages could obtain overnight accommodation in monasteries, but later a demand for hostelries grew with the popularity of pilgrimages and travel. The hostelers of London were granted guild status in 1446, and in 1514 the guild became the worshipful company of innholders. A survey in 1577 of drinkage establishment in England and Wales for taxation purposes recorded 14,202 alehouses. And this is in 1577. My gosh. 1,631 inns, more alehouses than inns, makes sense, and 329 taverns, representing one pub for every 187 people. That would keep crowds down. Social distancing. Inns are buildings where travelers can seek lodging. Well, who cares about inns? I want to know about pubs. The 1830 Beer House Act. Gin was popularized in England following the acquisition of William of Orange in 1688, largely because it provided an alternative to the French brandy at a time of both political and religious conflict between Britain and France. When has that ever changed? Between 1689 and 1697, the British government passed a range of legislation aimed at restricting brandy imports and encouraging domestic gin production. No licenses were required to make spirits You know, I wasn't even going to read this. I was going to read Moby Dick instead, but I changed my mind because it seemed logical. And then I said, wait a minute, maybe I should read the Bartender's Bible. But that might get kind of boring, and my tongue would get even more tied with all the ounces and this and that and this and that. It was not until the 19th century that the pubs we know them today first began to appear. Before this time, alehouses were largely indistinguishable from private houses, and the poor standards of rural roads meant that, away from larger towns, the only beer available was often that which had been brewed by the publican himself. Publican. With the arrival of the Industrial Revolution, reading Wikipedia became really boring in the UK. I just ad-libbed. Gin houses and palaces were becoming increasingly popular. Actually, that's usually what I do when I read stories. I usually just put extra stuff in there, and that's more entertaining. So why wasn't I doing it this time? I don't know. By the mid-19th century, pubs were being widely purpose-built, allowing their owners to incorporate architectural features which distinguished them from private houses. Yeah, let's go to Jim's for a drink tonight, and made them stand out from the competition. Many existing public houses were also redeveloped at the time, borrowing features from other building types and gradually developing the characteristics which go to make pubs the instantly recognizable institutions that exist today. And I will stop right there. Hope you enjoyed Hovercraft and Pubbing. Whatever that means. Reading about pubs on Wikipedia. Beer engines! I gotta read this. Ooh, this gets more interesting down here. What was I even reading in the beginning? It was kind of boring. Beer engines. Now that sounds cool.